Okay.
How do I know that?
Oh, you got a phone call.
The school calls if your child has been absent. There's an automated call at 6 o'clock, so that's how we know what time it is. But her second child graduated, so I'm like, I'm gonna have to tell you what time it is from now
I won't know when it's 6 o'clock.
on. Um, okay, so we're live on YouTube, and we are recording just in the background for backup. I'm going to start this. It's our quarterly Bluewater Park Water System Community Information Meeting. We're doing these quarterly meetings to keep the community apprised of developments in financial and infrastructure wise. Sorry, I'm just letting a couple more people in here. 5, in fact, have just joined. So maybe I'll just let them. Okay. Okay, welcome. Oh, and there's Chana. And so just to let you know for the meeting, I will be muting people just to keep the background noise to a minimum. And Patrick will be presenting primarily today. Patrick is our Director of Engineer. Patrick, you know, want to wave, say hi.
Hi.
Tim, and then we have Kristen Watson is our Chief Financial Officer. She'll be here to answer questions about finances. Kristen, hi. And Rob Duffy is the Chair of the Local Advisory Committee. And Jonathan Bell and Chana Palpoa are also local advisory committee members. We have Councillor Morse is our council liaison. She's on 2 meetings right now, so she'll be black screen and silent until about 6:15. Please ask questions throughout. You can raise your physical hand, digital hand, or in the chat room, you can put your question and I can read it for you. And I think we should get started. Patrick, do you have a presentation?
Sure. I'll just share my screen.
Thank you.
So this is an update. The last update we had was in September, and there has been some progress. A lot of what we've been looking at has been the water main replacement project. If you remember, the design and tender documents were nearly complete for the Bowen Bay well upgrades and the system interconnection. That it made sense to go ahead and finish those documents so that that project would be ready to go, which it essentially is. And that would be the pre-tender cost estimate for that project has gone up slightly from the last update. We had a more recent update from the consultants, and also allowing for some inflation in costs, which anytime we're delaying projects seems to be a factor. It's possible, I'm not sure if we'd be able to at this point tender and construct before summer 2024. This was tendering on hold pending review of the Stewart well that we discussed last time. High capacity well based on what the well drillers were seeing. There has been some subsequent pumping tests done that are showed slower than expected recovery traits. They did a 72-hour pumping test in that involved variable pumping rates in November, mid-November, and then recently they did a 72-hour constant rate pumping test. We got some preliminary feedback from the hydrogeologist, which is Matthew Munn, indicating that somewhere between 9 and 21 GPM US gallons per minute was a reasonable estimate of sustainable yield for that well. So quite a bit less than the 50 gallons per minute the well drillers were estimating. Thus, there's still a bunch of additional data that Matthew still needs to go through and do some calculations on. So we'll get some better information on that in the next, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So we still haven't confirmed whether to proceed with this Bowen Bay well upgrades and system interconnection. Um, it does seem less likely that um, relying on the Stewart well to fulfill all our hopes and dreams might not be the best approach. Um, and just we discussed some of this last time. There's some uncertainty in when this Stewart well would come online. It relies also on the King Edward Bay development timing, and of course the Stewart subdivision timing. So there likely wouldn't be a solution in place with that well for certainly not this summer and possibly 2025 as well. And really the advantages and disadvantages, just as a reminder, I mean, there's obviously cost savings to if we could rely just on the Stewart well to make up the supply gap. And that's uncertain. We're evaluating that with the hydrogeologist and with Urban Systems. And like I said, I'll have more on that soon. Certainly the advantage of having the Bowen Bay wells and eventually this Stewart well is an increased resiliency of having this substantial supply sources that are from different aquifers, and it's certainly in terms of risk management for the water system and ensuring level of service, that's a big plus. Just an update on the water main and culvert replacements, as we do have some challenges with our municipal budget this year. We have a major bridge replacement on Carter Road that is taking a lot of budget space and difficult to take on all of the culverts, which we, as discussed, are a municipal expense. So looking at a phasing plan that's implementing and completing the southwest end of the system in 2024, where there's less culverts to be addressed as part of that, and then deferring the northeast end of the system where there are quite a few larger culverts and a lot more expense in that regard, deferring that until 2025. So that would mean still planning to do the bulk of the water mains, about 2/3 of the water mains this year, in 2024, and then the remainder in 2025. So that's a little bit different than the phasing, the possible 3-year phase that we proposed last time. I think one of the factors governing the 3-year phasing was the need to, or the desire to reevaluate once we had the system interconnection up and running, and then potentially divert effort towards well exploration and potentially development. I think with the what we've seen with the Stewart well, it's unlikely that additional well exploration and development is going to be a high priority. If we have the so in that case, in that sense, there's not really a need for that intermediate. Let's evaluate and possibly divert funds towards well exploration. There's not as much need for that step. So still design for the water mains and culverts is underway. That's getting closer to completion. Probably January before we have some tender documents. And that leaves tendering in the February to March, and then construction for the first phase in April to September of next year. Potentially tendering for the second phase in the end of 2024, and construction and completing that in 2025. And as I mentioned, it's still uncertain how the the well optimization interconnection would fit in with that if that was to proceed. So that's the update. If there's any questions, anything you'd like me to discuss further.
Thank you, Patrick. And as I mentioned, if people would like to ask a question, they can raise their physical hand, digital hand, put it in the chat.
I believe Claire Stewart had potentially some questions following up on that email Claire sent in today. Did you want to bring that up right now, Claire?
There she is. Claire, you've been muted if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay, I've unmuted myself.
Thank you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the only question, well, I've got a couple of questions. Right at the end of my driveway, there's a pink arrow spray painted on the road, and I was wondering what that was about. And a couple of my neighbors are wondering the same thing because they have pink arrows spray painted too. Also, my septic line runs down the side of the road.
Okay.
So if I have no idea if Windjammer is going to be dug up, but if it is, I've got a septic line that runs down the side of the road.
Okay. Well, there was some utility locating done, mainly to locate the existing main.
Yep.
And the idea being that locating the new main on the opposite side of the road would allow the service to be in place until it position to be switched over. And then
Okay.
in terms of your sanitary line, if that's in the road right of way, we certainly need to know about that.
Yep.
And so maybe that's something that I'll follow up with you offline from.
Yeah, and I did send an email in earlier today, and I think it was Steph who forwarded it on to you. So you've got my contact info.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the markings would have been related to that, to the design process and the utility locating that was done.
Yeah.
And I guess just to expand on that, Patrick, there's been a number of different markings throughout the community on the roads. The pink and orange markings, I believe, was a combination of identifying existing culvert runs. I believe there was some bedrock depth research done.
Yeah.
And then the blue markings, the blue flags, and the blue pins nailed into the pavement is the theoretical path of the existing water mains under the roads, just for clarity to the community.
Patrick, is it possible, can you clarify when you just said in response to Claire's question, you said the new main would be located to the opposite side? That doesn't really relate. Like, what do you mean by the opposite side?
Well, it may make sense to have the alignment on the opposite side of the road from the existing main. If you're
still don't understand that, because the blue pins, as Rob pointed out, sort of move from one side of the road to the other side of the road as you sort of make your way along. At least it does in my area. So
yeah.
Can we look at east or west? Can we get a sort of delineation of?
That's the process. The design, part of the design process that's underway right now is establishing the alignment. But it is important to know where the existing water main is to understand, well, how could we construct this new main while minimizing service disruptions on the folks in Bluewater, and to facilitate and reduce the cost of changing the service over when that needs to be done. So it does meander a bit, and so it it may be that some sections of the main are adjacent to where the current main is, and then others are in another part of the road right of way. If the advantage is if it's in the other part of another part of the road right of way, and you can install the new main without disrupting the existing main, it facilitates the maintenance of service.
I think what we can understand then is that there hasn't been a decision on the actual location for the new main.
Yeah, there's we're having a review tomorrow with the consultant team to look at horizontal alignment, their preliminary draft at that. So
Yeah.
that'll be soon.
Yeah, look, and I think once you get that information, I think anything we can do as a LAC to help sort of communicate and get feedback from folks about their concerns, that's something where we can help. But I think that's where I wanted to sort of understand. It's been a question we all are asking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks, Chana, for that. Just to expand on that too, as I've been walking the roads with the dog, the accuracy of the water main locates is actually fairly inaccurate in places, Patrick. So you're going to have to revisit some of those sections, like the section that as it gets close to Captain's Way intersection more on the toward our end, the far end. It's got the lines running underneath bedrock outcrop in front of a number of residents' driveways. We know that the line's not there, and they actually located the supposed existing water main through the Spyglass Isle View section that was replaced 2 years ago, where that was installed on the mountain side, or if you're Hawaiian, the Maka side of the road, instead of on the downward side toward the ocean, where it had sunk 13 to 15 feet over time due to the road collapse. So they've located it in the original existing that's no longer there. So I think you got to revisit with the utility locates company of their inaccuracy of their locates. So just keep that in mind. And in looking at some, I haven't walked all of Windjammer lately, but predominantly most of the lines do run more toward the ocean side of the road with some meandering, of course. So, and I guess the best efforts would be to try and align it on the opposite side of the road, so it would not take down the water supply to the community for an extended period of time.
Locates aren't perfect, and it's not the only factor that's considered in the design.
Yep.
And it's not a guarantee when we provide information to bidding contractors that, here's where our best guess at where existing utilities are. This is where we're requiring the new pipes to be constructed, and there's often variations in that occur during the course of construction as well.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So as it stands right now, a decision on go forward with the Schooner Lane property well drilling, or the tie-in of the wells and the municipal wells in Bowen Bay is still on hold until we have more information, which I guess would be the next community meeting that we'd have in the new year.
I would expect by then that will, and it may be, a fair bit before then that we have a better sense of that. I expect it will be. And so it would probably make sense to communicate that sooner than waiting for the next community meeting.
Okay. Yeah, and we could look at communicating that out to the community through various means if information does come forward a lot sooner than the next meeting.
I can't figure out my hand option on here, so I'll just.
It's okay.
I'm not used to Zoom. I'm used to Teams. So, Patrick, can you just clarify? So what's the actual decision point? So we've all sort of like sat back and approved and championed for approval of a $3.1 million loan here for a set of work that's based on a set of engineering studies. So we would assume that the Schooner Lane, like this whole Stewart property piece and all of that work, requires a level of comprehensive engineering studies in order to take a decision. But what is the decision and what level of information are you looking for? Because that's going to drive timeframes. We're already looking at a delay on getting us access to the resiliency in our water supply. So just curious, like, can you comment on that?
Decision point is really the system doesn't need to be designed completely to make these decisions. What we do need is a better estimate than we currently have of the sustainable yield of that well, and then to review whether that on its own is a good enough water supply solution for Bluewater, or if it's better to have that supply in addition to what we'd always been planning for, which is the upgrading, the optimizing of the Bowen Bay wells and interconnection of those systems. So that's something that we should have better information in the next couple of weeks from the hydrogeologists, and we'd be discussing that with the hydrogeologist, with Ian Stewart, and of course our design consultants, Urban Systems, to come to a decision about what makes the most sense for the long-term sustainable supply of the community. And so it would have the advantage of relying on the Stewart well, if that's feasible, and it may not be, and that's why we need a better understanding of sustainable yield, better estimate than we've got. That would save money. It would also have timeline implications, like you mentioned, and like I said in my presentation, it's more uncertain. So there's a lot of advantages, I think, to proceeding with our plan A. It's just it's been delayed for a few months here, and it shouldn't need to be delayed for too much more. It's really in the final stages of the hydrogeological assessment is in progress, and then really decisions can be made from there.
Patrick, maybe just building on that, because maybe we turn this on its head and sort of say, we all proceeded with process A. Here's process B going on over here. There's going to be another level of hydrogeological studies that need to be had to improve confidence and understanding what that potential actually is. But there comes a point in time when a decision needs to be made to execute in 2025. We need to understand when that timeline comes, because it has nothing to do with that. So I think for me, that's going to be helpful to understand timeframes that are based on tendering, getting the best value for the dollars that we've approved, and moving forward with process A.
I guess I'm trying to follow that there. You're wondering how, in terms of being ready for 2025 summer, there's plenty of time for that. It's
I get it, but I'm just saying it's going to be helpful to put that into a timeline.
Thank you, Chana. Jonathan, Bella's had his hand up for a while. Or didn't we jump in?
Yeah, my hand's getting tired. A little off topic, but Patrick, how did we do this summer, water-wise?
This summer was better than the previous summer, and
why? It was pretty dry summer.
It was a pretty dry summer, so we had actually expected worse. I think one of the main factors in that is that the the well pump in well 3 in Bluewater was replaced and operating much more effectively than it had been for that well. So there was a better supply than there was in the previous year from Bluewater. There was still periods where the the King Edward Bay tank wasn't keeping up with the demand, but it didn't get down as low as it had previously.
So it took a while. Like there was that imbalance in terms of stages. I forget. We went to stage 3 right away. Stage 2,
May 1st.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I'm thinking that had something to do with it, possibly. And I mean, it was sort of a staggered where King Edward Bay eventually got to stage 3. I think it was stage 2, and then a while after that, it was Bowen Bay. From those learnings last year, would you put all 3 at stage 3 at the same time?
I mean, that's something that we need to iron out is the if the systems are interconnected. So you're talking about a scenario where they're not interconnected?
Well, basically the status quo. So
Status quo.
last summer was a really dry summer. You immediately went to stage 3, which
Yeah.
I'm thinking that certainly helped. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that helped. And obviously we draw water from, I guess it's King Edward Bay. I mean, we're not drawing any water from Bowen Bay right now, are we?
No, so I mean,
No. So Bowen Bay doesn't matter. But for us, King Edward Bay went immediately to stage 3, could, maintain a reasonable, prosperous summer,
Yeah.
water-wise.
Well, that's certainly something that we have to consider. Like you said, with status quo, Bluewater and King Edward Bay are interconnected in their fate in the taking water from the same tank. Bowen Bay under the current scenario isn't, so it wouldn't really make sense to tie it to that.
Right. I agree.
And so yeah, that's something that we'd have to look at. We'd have a different perspective from the folks in King Edward Bay, which you can probably understand where they might be coming from. But I understand what you're saying. It's a liter of water saved on one side of the border where the other is essentially the same and
Well, yeah,
dealing
obviously
with the same issue.
I mean, I don't think there was that much hardship for too many people with stage 3. I mean, we have a garden. I mean, we take most of the water from tanks, but we do use some of the water for gardens, and we certainly never had a problem, or we're still quite low in our usage. So anyways, that was my point.
And I guess Jonathan and Patrick, the more forensic analysis of the data from the water usage per household this past year would probably shine a light more on when the different stages were enacted in the different communities to see what kind of an impact that had, and a comparison to the usage from last year as well. That would tell the tale pretty quickly on how effective it was, and was there significant conservation or less use of water when a different stage restriction was enacted. So that would be one thing. And then did you ever track down that massive anomaly of unaccounted for water that was in the King Edward Bay system from 2022, and did that same anomaly appear this year in the data, or is that leveled off, and an explanation for that anomaly was it found?
I don't think we've got too much more insight into that. I'd have to get back to you about that. I don't know.
I got another quick one on sort of same topic, Patrick. It's starting off this winter to be, I want to say, relatively dry. we haven't had sort of the massive precipitations as we've had in the past, like in November. Is there a way for you to tell, or the folks, come springtime, what's the state of the aquifers or not, kind of thing for the season?
Yeah, I mean, you can get some insight by looking at the response to pumping.
Right.
When the waters, when the wells are being pumped, and how are they responding? There's ways to get some insight into the aquifers. That's kind of like a snapshot. That's why
Yeah.
these aquifer studies look at a full season at least, from from recharging to heavier use and more stress in the summer, and then rebounding through the fall.
Okay.
Are any other members of the public who have questions for Patrick, or Kristen also is here? Financial
I guess
questions.
I got a couple more questions, Steph, to Patrick. Just to reinforce what Chana was indicating in regard to, at some point there's going to have to be a decision of one way or another. So that's what we're going to be looking for here in the immediate future, to make a hard decision on which way that we go here. But also, I guess there's also criteria that the municipality in their negotiations with any developer on the amount of supplemental water supply that they would be bringing to the table in order to accentuate the existing systems there, to fulfill the needs of the development and its requirements, and any supplemental above that as a safety measure. Has there been any number thoughts in regard to that just yet, or is it still in too preliminary stages?
No, I mean, that's something that there's ongoing discussions about, and that was really what prompted all of the exploratory work that Ian did, in looking for water sources, and that led to a well that's substantially more promising than the others. Certainly appears to have well beyond what's needed for the level of development that's proposed there, and will contribute substantially to the Bluewater supply. It's still a bit of a question about how much, and how much that will be.
And not just the Bluewater supply, because this would connect up to the King Edward Bay tank, so it would be a west side supply, not specific to a community.
Right. That's
just trying to keep an even line on,
clear.
on how we talk about things.
Hannah's got a question.
Yeah, so not a question, but it's just maybe a point of clarification that any decision isn't binary necessarily. So building on what Rob said, Patrick, it's really about leaving the optionality in, because as I understand, Bluewater Park has a freeze on all building permits. So we're because of the water supply, and I think that unless someone says otherwise, that's what my understanding, and I think our understanding. So we're very open to sort of exploring and understanding the optionality for tying in and building additional resiliency into the system. So we appreciate that work and the conversations that are ongoing.
I got a question for Kristen. I don't leave you out of this. Are we starting the variable rate billing January 1st?
That's the rate bylaw that I'm going to be bringing forward. We haven't set the LAC meeting date yet. We will do that very soon and bring the new budget and the new variable rate bylaw. We'll also bring forward our data on consumption for the year, so that we'll have a better picture of what that is when people are on a very stringent and monitored consumption right from the beginning of the season. So that'll be helpful in that discussion, I think.
Okay.
Will that be for all the water systems on the west side, or is this still going to be geared toward Bluewater and King Edward Bay that have voted in favor of this?
We'll be bringing the same bylaw structure forward for all three water districts.
And that's leveraging on our meetings that we had earlier this summer
Yeah,
of going the volumetric.
yeah.
So are you going to be having another meeting with the chairs before we proceed with that even further?
The meetings with the chairs are more around policy and that's sort of operations cost allocation based on a fully operational harmonized system. I'm going to be doing the bylaw for the 2024 budget, the budget bylaw for 2024. I'm going to do it on the same model that we have already, which is a metered rate measurement from King Edward Bay to Bluewater net usage and then transfer of resources, financial resources back to King Edward Bay in respect of consumption in Bluewater Park. So I'm going to use that same model at this point. When we've got this budget done, then we can get back to our work on the policy, the operations cost policy.
Okay, so the structure is not changing for 2024 yet.
No.
We're not going to volumetric metering 100%.
I'm going to bring the bylaw, the hybrid metered rate bylaw back for consideration for January for 2024. But but any kind of I mean, irrespective of the rate bylaw, the operational cost allocation model won't be any different than what we've seen in prior years. When we do that work with the chairs of the committee, when we get back to that piece, I mean, I kind of put it off pending this Stewart potential. But of course, it's pretty clear to me that we're gonna have to revisit it pretty soon. So we'll get back to that after we get our budgets done and carry forward with that work on the cost allocation policy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Kristen got put on the hot seat. Any more finance questions for Kristen?
I have just a little bit of an update if you guys are interested. We do have the the temporary borrowing bylaw, which is establishing the line of credit in place. So as soon as we start requiring those funds, we have ready access to the loan authorization. We have not drawn on that at all to date this year. I think that I'm going to just look at where we're at. We've got one more month in the fiscal year. We've got all of the operating expenses in up until the beginning. You know, we're quite current here. We're running a surplus in the operations budget of about $114,000. Our expenses are posted through October for the design work. And we have spent about $120,000 there on the design side. So we still have 2 more months to get in. So I do think that by the end of the year, we will need to draw a little bit on that line of credit, but I'm guessing somewhere in the region of about 50,000. So we won't have, and I won't be drawing it until almost like the last week of December. So there will be very little interest charges attributable to Bluewater Park this year and very little loan drawdown in respect of the work to date on this project. So that's good news. We did have we had $23,000 set aside to budget for interest expense for this year, so we won't be incurring any of that.
And I believe the bills are in the mail.
For, yeah, they should have received them, probably.
Yeah,
if
we got
you
'em.
check your
We
box,
got 'em.
yeah.
I haven't checked my mailbox yet. I've been having people ask me when it's coming.
So yeah, they're there. They went out, late last week.
See what happens when you go on walks in the community with
They
the dog.
ask you all the things.
Yeah.
With your dog. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being that resource for the community. Rob. That's wonderful. All of you, LIC, thanks. Shanna, you've got another question.
Yeah, Kristen, so what, in terms of like sort of reporting on budget and plan, like how would we like have visibility on understanding potential areas where we may go over what we've sort of committed to? And I guess we're sort of looking at it from our perspective, like, are we gonna sort of I work on a lot of engineering projects and mining projects, so I see the cost overruns, and so I just sort of get a little concerned about what we've borrowed and
Mhm.
potential future additions. So there's that question of, as early as possible, how we sort of share transparency around that.
Mhm.
And then second question would be, are we still sort of collectively pursuing all options for additional financing from either the province or the feds?
Certainly from a grant perspective, like we are constantly monitoring all of those available programs. I also am happy to report that I think at the elected official level, certainly I know some of the feedback from the UBCM conference and stuff was that elected officials and our CAO are actively lobbying the provincial governments to recognize that infrastructure maintenance and repair is becoming such a huge burden, especially in small communities, and that you know, these grant programs shouldn't always be directed at new infrastructure or infrastructure to improve something, but that funding be made available really just to protect and invest in what we already have and how critical and how cost prohibitive it is for people. So those messages I hope are being heard at the provincial level. So certainly I know from the perspective of our CAO that every time, every year they can get a hold of, they're having those kinds of conversations. So yes to the alternative funding question. Your other question around cost monitoring and things like that. So we're just in the design process. Where the next step is to finish that, tender the project, and I believe we'll be going for a fixed price cost project at that point, which gives us some degree of certainty around cost management. The other side of it too is with this water main replacement, we have this fixed limited budget. So I don't want to speak out of turn, but Patrick will correct me if I'm wrong, but if it comes back and it's over, I think there's some flexibility in there to change the scope a little bit and do less work to make it fit within the budget. So Patrick, is that correct or?
Well, that would certainly be one of the options.
Yeah.
If faced with that scenario.
Yeah.
We would have, one of the options we're looking at is, even though we're not proceeding with all the work currently, concurrently, that it all be tendered at as one project. So we have some cost certainty, and having a bigger project that a contractor can take and fit into their schedule for 2024 and 2025. There's some appeal to that. And we're also considering tendering the Eagle Cliff Cove Bay connection work, and combining that as well, just for the similar reasons, to have a more attractive piece of work that the market would be hopefully interested in.
Thank you for that, Patrick. And Janice says, thank you. These are great questions. We've lost a few participants. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to ask a question or ask Rob's dog a question on Zoom?
If nobody else, I got a couple more questions, mostly with you, Patrick. In regard to once the scope is solidified, so we'll be able to see what all the details of what the requests are for the project. Is that correct?
Sorry, what do you mean by requests?
So we've got water main upgrades, but I believe there's been talks over the last couple of years at meetings that wellhead protection measures would be put in place. Are those going to be part of the project, or is that being handled outside this particular project? Like, where do those parts stand?
Yeah, I think that is something that's on our list to proceed with. Certainly starting with the risk assessment, the GARP assessments, looking at where there's groundwater at risk of pathogens. That's the first step that in coastal health requires that. So it's something that we have to do, and we're proceeding with that in all of the groundwater systems. And that's something that is separate from this capital project. It would be, part of the ongoing operation budget and not capital budget.
Doesn't take away from the original agreed upon phased approach for this project. Okay.
No.
Okay. Other than, yeah, I don't have much more right now for questions. I guess it's just a bit of a, other than the design work for the flow line from the municipal wells in Bowen Bay to interconnect to the mains that goes up to the water tank in King Edward Bay. That design work is still proceeding or substantially complete?
That's substantially complete. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's at a place where it can be tendered.
Okay. So at least that's in place for if there's a decision one way or another. And I guess the appetite of the community is going to come down to are they willing to continue a status quo for water availability, especially in the summer months of what we had for the last number of years. This year, personally, wasn't that big of a struggle. But that's the appetite from the community. We'll have to gauge as we get down to that decision of which way we want to go in these phases of the projects and the supplemental water that could or could not be as lucratively available, or as how long it takes to come online too. So yeah, definitely see some big decisions, feedback coming in the new year once we have more information.
Rob, can you elaborate what you just said? I didn't quite understand it. What big decisions are coming up?
Whether it proceeds with the flow line from the wells in Bowen Bay to connect into the main system, whether that decision, based on the amount of water that's proven from the Schooner Lane Ian Stewart well, and also how long that's going to take to come online. Because if we don't go ahead with the flow line from the wells in Bowen Bay now, we're going to be dealing with the same water restrictions for the next couple of years. And that's part of what finding out from the community, what appetite they have for that.
Okay. I mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I would just go, you already done the work for the Bowen Bay, that's a certainty.
Yep.
Like, well, I guess I'm just, my personal comment is that just seems to be a much more certain approach. The other one seems a little bit more rolling the dice. So, but that's just one person's comment.
Okay. Thank you for your comment.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna ask if anyone has questions, and Rob's gonna say I have two more. You wanna do your
I'm
two
good
more
for now.
now? You're okay for now?
Yeah, I'm okay for
Hannah,
now.
any more emojis? Nope. Kristen, you've shared everything you need to share about the money? All good? Patrick?
Yeah, it's nothing more.
Good, so we'll get some of these notes together and then our comms team will send them out through our mailing lists and a link in social media. And we'll be in touch.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Holidays.